A Shalom Akin, Shabbat Shalom, all praises, glory and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakodash. Double honors the apostles and the elders, great millstone, for teaching us his truth, and salutations to the sincere Akim and Akwatim listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Okwai. I'm back in here with another quick and Lord's will as always an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I kind of just wanted to go through the importance of milk, sincere milk, and how that nurtures good conduct, right? So what I really wanted to do from a carnal perspective, I kind of wanted to go through this what's milk, representing foundation, but I kind of just want to touch on some of the benefits of colostrum, right? So essentially, let me just get it here. I just wanted to get a bit, I guess, a rundown of what colostrum is for brothers and sisters that may not know. So essentially, colostrum is the first form of breast milk that is released from by the mammary glands after giving birth. It says it's nutrient dense and high in antibodies and antioxidants to build a newborn baby's immune system. It says it changes to breast milk within 2 to 4 days after your baby is born. It says colostrum is thicker and more yellow than traditional breast milk, right? So I want to just get a little bit more here in regards to breast milk. It says, in regards to colostrum, it says it's high in, hold on. It says it's high in protein, vitamins, minerals, immunoglobulins, which are antibodies, and it says that help build your baby's immune system. It's often called liquid gold because it's rich, golden color, and valuable benefits. It says here that colostrum is high in protein and low in fat and sugar. It says it's filled with white blood cells that produce antibodies. These antibodies strengthen your baby's immune system, protecting him or her from infection. It says colostrum is highly concentrated and nutrient dense, even in tiny doses, so your baby's tummy doesn't need a lot to reap its benefits. So here are the kinds of nutrients that it provides. It says the immunoglobulin, which is an antibody. It says lactoferrin, which is a protein to help prevent infection, leukocytes, which are white blood cells. It says epidermal growth factor, a protein that stimulates cell growth, right? So you might be wondering, why am I reading this? I'm reading this to show you the importance of milk in a spiritual perspective, because the milk also provides situational awareness, proper conduct, being able to discern. It gives you an understanding of how to essentially navigate through the day to day. Because if you notice from the recent news, you see that Trump, for example, is coming down on a lot of the Israelites and essentially the homeless in parts of DC, right? And I thought about it from a spiritual perspective. Trump is basically being used by the Heavenly Father, to essentially punish Israelites that don't have understanding, right? That won't turn from wicked ways. They don't exemplify a fear of the Lord. They pretty much exemplify ungodly children, right? So I kind of wanted to read this just to show you, the importance of, milk to help nurture, strong children, as we are that strong, those children being nurtured in the understanding, right? That's why wisdom is normally referred to as a woman, right? As being nourished, right? So what I wanted to do is I guess I'll start off with this precept here, which kind of puts us into in a very different spirit when you compare ourselves, you know, versus when you can compare the mass majority of the people, the YNs, the Keishas, the Pookies, the Ray Rays, the way that they don't exemplify Yahushai because they have essentially that strong evil eye towards one another. They're wise to do evil, but to do good, they have no knowledge. And now you see, Trump is essentially becoming and acting as a whipping stick that's essentially punishing, our people, right? So this is Sirach chapter 10, verse 19, and it says, "They that fear the Lord are a sure seed, and they that love him an honorable plant." It says, "They that have regard not the law are a dishonorable seed, and they that transgress the commandments are a deceivable seed," right? So this shows you, the difference between, the honorable, the hopeful elect, and you see the contrast, a dishonorable seed. The majority of our people behave as dishonorable seed, as ungodly children, right? And this is why you see the Lord is stirring up Trump, through these different decrees to essentially punish, the mass majority of our people. But our people didn't want to hearken to the importance of the milk, the importance of the understanding to be able to nourish and understanding, who they are, who their enemy is, and what comes with knowing that you're an Israelite is proper conduct, because we're supposed to be a holy and a right seed, right? But our people behave as degenerate plants, right? So, I just wanted to touch on a couple of concepts in regards to the milk, because the milk, it really is very, very important, for proper nourishment, for proper development. And you see how the colostrum as a whole, it covers, a plethora of different nutrients. It's very, very nutrient dense, right? Just like how milk, in the spiritual sense, it covers, different avenues of different situations, right? How to, manage when it comes to, like, for example, managing emotions, fruits of the spirit, being peaceable of all men, so on and so forth, dealing with people, brotherly affection, rebuke, temperance, so on and so forth. So many different plethora of different avenues, of what the milk actually covers, right? So it's not, this is very, 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 very important, for our development, right? So let me get this, here. One second, where is it? Okay, this is Luke chapter 18, verse 15, and it says, "And they brought unto him also little infants, that he would touch them. But when his disciples saw it, they rebuked them. But Yahushua called unto them, and said, Suffer little children to come unto me, and forbid them not. For of such is the kingdom of the Most High. Verily I say unto you, whosoever shall not receive the kingdom of the Most High as a little child, shall in no wise enter therein," right? And when you look at the nature of children, they have and exemplify humility, because, they have to be properly instructed. The scriptures say that, train up a child in the way that it should go, so when they are old, they do not depart from it, A lot of our, people, they might come into understanding of knowing that they're an Israelite, and they're properly, they're poorly essentially nourished, you know, properly and badly malnourished. When you look at the nature, I'm sorry, the way that the majority of, of these young Israelites conduct themselves, right? These YNs, and the way they conduct themselves, because they have no conduct, no etiquette. And conduct really comes from, actually having and exemplifying a fear of the Lord, and they don't have that type of wisdom, right? You see it in their ways and their behaviors. And Yahushua said, a tree is known by its fruits. Fruit, when you go into it, is the word there is karpos, which means their works and their deeds. Their deeds are very, very wicked. They're wise to do evil, but to do good, they actually absolutely have no knowledge, right? So, let me go to, where is that? So this is First Peter chapter 2, verse 1, and it says, wherefore, laying aside all malice and guile and hypocrisies and envies and all evil speakings, as newborn babes, desire the sincere milk of the word, that we may grow thereby. If so, ye have tasted that the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai is gracious, right? So let me get that word where it says milk here. Okay, so it says less difficult truths. Well, it says Christian here, so, but it says less difficult truths. So pretty much things that are, digestible, very, very simple. I don't want to say simple to understand, but, very, very digestible, right? It's not like heavy meat. It's not like, Second Ezra 11, and, like those kind of heavier breakdowns. And this is not to knock the importance of breakdowns, but the conduct goes a long way. That's really the point and the summary of this entire lesson, really, right? So let me get that word sincere, actually, right? Because I think even Paul talked about this also. Hold on one second. Okay, so sincere, it says unmixed, pure, unadulterated. It says without dishonest intent, godless, right? So having a pure, frame of mind. And when you go into, I believe it's 2 Corinthians 11, the Paul talks about how our minds were essentially espoused to one husband, that we may be chaste. And chaste, when you go into the etymology of it, it refers to a mind that is pure. When you look at the way, and again, I use, the people on the outside without understanding, you see how the way they conduct themselves, because their understanding it's very mixed with different doctrines, philosophies, wine. So they're essentially, they're drunk, they're staggered, they're back and forth, right? Something that somebody is essentially, if you describe someone as sophisticated, it refers to somebody who is essentially impure, right? They're not pure, right? It's a complete opposite of somebody who is chaste, right? It sounds fancy, but it actually means somebody who is adulterated, something that is it's impure, it's tainted, right? It's not pure, right? So, but I wanted to go back here also, so to make this quick point, because it mentioned it mentioned malice and guile, hypocrisies, envies, evil speakings. And as I read that, I was just thinking about, you know, after King, well, he wasn't king at the time, David, he defeated Goliath. You saw the way King Saul conducted himself. He conducted himself as somebody, who had a lot of envy and malice towards David, right? Here it is, you have a young man, of your own kin. You may have been of a different tribe, but this is still your own brother. This is your own kinsman, right? Your own flesh and blood. But he was so tripping to the point where he had an evil spirit upon him, and he wanted to inflict harm and essentially to destroy David, right? He did all kinds of things. He tried to toss javelins at him. He this is the type of mind, this is the type of person who is not properly nourished with sincere milk. You see it in his behavior, right? The way he conducted and he treated his own kin, his own flesh and blood, right? And this is the kind of way, and you see a lot of our people exemplify that type of behavior, right? But if you look at the flip side of way David conducted himself, as much as the Lord was, yes, he was using King Saul to chastise him, but at the same time, what did King David do? Just to compare and contrast, there were opportunities. King David had an opportunity to what's the word I'm looking for? I guess enact revenge upon King Saul, but he didn't take it. As a matter of fact, let me find that account. Let me just find, just for edification, one second. Okay, this is First Samuel chapter 26. I'll start at verse 5, and it says, "And David arose and came to place where Saul had pitched. Then David beheld the place where Saul lay, and Abner the son of Ner, captain of his host, Saul lay in the trench, and the people pitched round about him. Then answered David, said to Ahimelech the Hittite and Abishai the son of Zeruiah, the brother of Joab, saying, Who will go down with me to Saul to the camp? And Abishai said, I will go down with thee. So David and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping within the trench, and his spear tucked in the ground at his bolster. But Abner and the people lay round about him." This is verse 8. And it says, "Then said Abishai to David, Most High Yahweh hath delivered thine enemy into thine hand this day. Therefore let me smite him, I pray thee, with the spear even to the earth at once. I will not smite him the second time." Right. So there was another time. There's another account where I believe they were in a cave, if I'm not mistaken. Right. And the Lord, it said that his heart smote him. But I'll keep reading because it still solidifies the point. It says, "And David said to Abishai, Destroy him not, for who can stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? David said furthermore, As the Lord Yahweh liveth, the Lord Yahweh shall smite him." So essentially, his mindset, you know what? He was behaving carnal towards me. I'm not gonna, raise fist at him, right? He understood, that, okay, King Saul was the Lord's anointed. Let me not raise my fist, my hand, my sword, whatever it is against him, right? And be guiltless, right? He understood that. So essentially, he was remaining spiritual, right? And left his what's it called? Is he casted that burden upon the Lord, right? Let me read this last verse, and it says, "And as the Lord Yahweh liveth, and the Lord shall smite him, or his days shall come to die, and he shall ascend to battle and perish." Right. So he left that care upon the Lord, right? And he shows that he didn't, and it's essentially this is technically his father-in-law, right? So he still operates with a mindset of honoring his father, you know, right? Honoring your father and your mother, so to speak, right? So he had proper nourishment, right? King David, he remained spiritual, and this is the fruits. You see the type of deeds that he conducted himself, right? So, um, there was another account, I wanted to grab. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Just bear with me on this. Let me just. Okay, so this is Tobit chapter 6. Um, Verse 13. This is going into the story of Tobit, and essentially, the angel Raphael, who was named as his name was Azarias, right? He accompanied, his son Tobias to essentially, they went on a journey to retrieve, some money, right? So it says that this is verse 13, and it says, "And then the young man answered the angel and said, I have heard brother Azarias that his maid hath been given to 7 men, who all died in the marriage chamber." So pretty much when you go back into the story, there was a woman, I think her name was Sarah, if I'm not mistaken, right? She also was being essentially plagued by an evil spirit, right? And essentially she was being, tested also, right? And all these men, an evil reproach was brought upon her because, all these 7 men, they all end up dying, right? So, but when you go later on into the end of the story, the Sarah was just being preserved for Tobias, which is Tobit's son. So it says, verse 14, and it says, the only one I am the only son of my father, and I am afraid lest I go in unto her, I die, as the other before, for a wicked spirit loveth her, which hurteth nobody but those which come unto her. Wherefore I also fear I die. This is Tobias speaking, and bring my father and mother's life because of me to the grave with sorrow. For I have no other son to bury them. And the angel said unto him, dost thou not remember the precepts which thy father gave thee? And thou shouldest marry a wife of thine own kindred. Wherefore hear me, O my brother, for she shall be given thee to wife, and make thou no reckoning of the evil spirit, for this same night shall she be given thee in marriage. And I'm reading this because in the earlier couple chapters, Tobit was giving his son proper counsel in regards to fearing the Lord, actually having that reverence for his parents, understanding the importance of alms, the importance of good nurturing. He was essentially giving his son spiritual game, right? And this is one of the things a lot of our children lack in this society. A lot of our children lack that spiritual game, on how to actually please the Lord, you know keeping these precepts, this understanding. Because I think it was King David that said, the law is like a lamp unto thy feet, right? Have that understanding in the midst of the valley of the shadow of death, right? That's how a child is able, that's how you duplicate your children. That's how you duplicate yourself, I should say, because you give your children the understanding of how you want them to conduct themselves beyond the grave, right? And this is what, the angel was reminding Tobias, regardless of the fact that he was far away from home, he was on his journey. Remember these precepts, right? Because this is your wisdom, as it says in Deuteronomy. This is your wisdom and your sight in the other nations, right? So the point is, this is also part of good nurturing. And he also strongly emphasized the importance of charity also, because scriptures talk about how charity covereth a multitude of sins, right? It's all part of good works and good nurturing, right? Yes, the breakdowns are important, knowing the prophecies are important, but this is just a lesson to stress the importance of, you know, um, sincere milk, how it helps you in your day-to-day circumstantially, and especially in these times it helps to just promote good conduct, especially with the way you see things unfolding with Trump. And they're coming and they're really really persecuting a lot of our people, because it shows, because our people are a bunch of wicked Israelites, right? They're a bunch of wicked people. They behave, they have no disregard. They're like wild bulls caught in a net, right? So anyways, I'll leave the lesson there, but Lord's will, as always, this lesson was edifying. Just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashem Shai. Until next time, I say Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.